Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Yu-Gi-Oh video, and today I want to do a kind of beginner's guide and deck profile on the Mayakashi deck. This is a deck I discovered actually just this past spring. I was at an anime convention playing Master Duel, and they had a solo mode for it, and I really enjoyed the deck, so I decided to make a serious competitive version of it, and I've been playing at my locals, and the deck is actually doing really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of explain the main concept of the deck for beginners who maybe don't understand what the deck does and are interested in it, and then I am going to go through like an actual competitive deck list and explain the combos and kind of how to play it, right? So the general idea with the deck, it is a synchro based and link based deck, and it revolves around this monster right here, Daki the Graceful Mayakashi. The way Daki works is she's a 2-star tuner, and anytime she's in the graveyard and a Mayakashi is special summoned from the or an extra deck monster is special summon, so if it's a link or synchro monster, anytime one of those is special summoned, she gets to summon back from the graveyard, and it's not limited to once per turn. The other thing to note about Mayakashis with like Daki and then like all of the synchros and links, you can only ever control one of them at a time, so you can't ever put more than one of them out. But basically the idea with the deck is you synchro climb and you link climb. So just a quick example of how this works is, let's say you have a level 1 Mayakashi and you have Daki on the field. You would synchro them for a level 3. The level 3 comes out. Daki specials from the graveyard because the synchro monster was summoned. And then you synchro the 3 and the 2 for the 5, and then she comes out. And you literally, if your opponent doesn't stop it, you can scale all the way through your entire extra deck. And then the idea is all of these monsters have really good effects when they are summoned from the graveyard. And then like one of the link monsters has a quick effect in graveyard. So the general idea with the deck is you want to synchro and link through your entire extra deck and then utilize your graveyard effects to beat your opponent that way. Now, the other thing about this deck that's kind of interesting, it's pretty much like a 1-card combo, and you can go through the whole thing. So what this deck utilizes is it utilizes like a very small Mayakashi package that can do everything it needs to do. And then you fill the deck with like really good anti-meta hand traps is what you do with the deck, right? So what I'm going to do now that I've explained just the base concept of it, let me go through the deck list, and then I will actually demonstrate it, and it will probably make more sense to you, right? So for Mayakashi monsters, there's only 3 main deck monsters you run. So you want to run 3 copies of Daki, who is your level 2 tuner. As I said, all she does is she just specials herself back every time you summon an extra deck Mayakashi monster. The other thing too is this deck locks you into Mayakashi, so you don't play around with other extra deck stuff. It is all Mayakashi, okay? Then you run 3 of Hajun. Hajun is like really the key to getting the engine going. He is a 1-star, and if he is normal or special summoned, you can special summon a Mayakashi from the deck. So typically what you do is you summon this, you special Daki, and then literally your whole combo goes off of that. Then you start to synchro climb, and then at the end of your synchro climb, you link climb, and then you kind of go crazy. And I'll demo how that looks. So you just play 3 of Hajun, 3 of Daki. Actually, so a lot of people actually only run 2 of Daki because you technically don't need 3. The idea is you want to search her out. So if you wanted to cut a Daki, you actually probably could. I play 3 just because I want to feel safe and know that I've got her in there. But Hajun, for sure, you always run 3. And then the other one that you're going to run 3 of is Yuki Musume. This monster is also a level 1 non-tuner. And what this one does is, if you have a Mayakashi card on the field, so it could be a spell, trap, monster, whatever, you can special summon this from your hand or graveyard, and then you can pitch any zombie to your graveyard. This is like ridiculously important because you pretty much have a backup strat that you can do if your Mayakashi stuff isn't working. So the 2 situations could be, let's say I open with just Daki and Yuki Musume. I can normal summon the Daki, special Yuki, and then dump something to the grave. And then with Daki and Yuki, I can still do the full synchro climb, right? Now, the slightly less ideal situation is if you end up, like, let's say you summon Hajun, but they negate it, right? They ash it. Then you've used your normal, you don't have access to Daki, but you have Yuki in hand or graveyard. You can still special Yuki. You could send Daki to graveyard so that she's there. And then you have 2 level 1s you can't synchro, but you can link. And then you can still do the link climb. It's not as ideal, but you can still at least get something going with the deck, right? And then the other option is there's another monster in the deck that you like to dump with Yuki Musume that we'll talk about when we get there. But that's basically it for the Mayakashi, so that's it. There are several other Mayakashi main deck monsters you can run, but I've honestly found they're not worth it. Like, they're pretty much win more cards. And the whole idea is you just want to get to this synchro climb and this link climb. In the other monsters, they're either too slow or they're more situational. You just don't need them. And so the way I structured the deck, it's really just hardcore focused on getting this Hajun, Daki, Yuki Musume combo. It's pretty much what you're doing, right? So for other main deck monsters, there's going to be a lot of flexibility to how you want to run the rest of the deck, because I literally just fill it with hand traps that are good. Now there's a couple ways to think about it. So I'm going to run 2 ghost spells. I'll go through my list and I'll explain kind of the idea behind it. 3 Ash. We've got 2 Nibiru. Okay. And then I've got 2 Droll and Lockbird. And then a non-hand trap I'm running is Eldritch. Eldritch is incredibly good in this deck because he's pretty much your backup strat. Eldritch alone, combined with all the hand traps, can still take over and win you a fight. I have won some duels without even getting my Synchro or Link Climb, just because the opponent and I go back and forth and I negate them out enough that I kind of get them to a stalemate, and then I pull out Eldritch and he's 3,500 and he's just like a big beat stick, and that's all you need. So Eldritch is a very common target. Like if you have everything else you need for your Mayakashis, then what you do is you dump Eldritch with this if either your Mayakashi stuff is failing and you can't get to it, or if you're actually winning really good and you get this on Beyond, then you can put your whole Mayakashi combo out and drop an Eldritch down as well, which is very, very good. But Eldritch is a really good target for that, right? So that's the monster lineup. Now, once again, this is more flexible. It's based on what people are running at your locals. Like if you don't feel like Ghost Spell is going to hurt them as much, you can take that out. Ghost Spell is one I tend to side out, but my logic for running certain hand traps, I'm thinking about it like offensively, but I'm also thinking about defensively, because what you're going to find in a moment, this deck runs Crossout Designator. So you part of it is that I'm putting stuff like Ghost Spell and Ash and Nibiru. These 3 punish my deck the most. If I miss my search because of Ash, I'm screwed. When I'm Synchro and Link climbing, I am summoning like a million times. They could nib me very easily and I can't negate it. And then Ghost Spell affects in the graveyard, which my deck is constantly doing. So part of the reason of running this, it's not just to do stuff to my opponent, but I have crossout targets if my opponent uses them against me. Now, if you find, for example, Ghost Spell, if you find out you don't think your opponent's running this and Ghost Spell doesn't hurt them, then you just side it out. And so your side deck is also filled with good anti-meta stuff, good hand traps, things like that, depending on the situation. So really, that's the concept of the deck, is you're running this small Mayakashi package that can do a lot with very little, and then you fill it with a lot of anything that's going to be anti-meta to help you win. So then for the spell lineup, we run 3 Mayakashi Return. This is essential because this literally just lets you search for any Mayakashi card. So normally what you do with this is you search for Hajun, and then that's it. You've got your full combo, right? We have Ghost Meets Girl, a Mayakashi story. This card is really good. This is great if you're going first and you draw this and you get your full combo. You pretty much lock your opponent out turn 2 with this, and then you move on to win in turn 3. What this does is you have to tribute a Mayakashi Link or Synchro monster. I think you can also do Shiranui, but we're not running Shiranui. So for our purposes, it's a Mayakashi monster. And then for the rest of the turn, neither player can special summon monsters. Basically, it locks your opponent out from special summoning from anywhere except the graveyard. So they can special from the graveyard, but they can't summon from the extra deck. They can't special from the deck. It literally will just lock your opponent out from playing, because most decks need to special from other places. So literally, it's like they get their normal summon and then they're done. They can't special from the hand. They can't special summon from extra deck. It just locks them down. So you run that at 3. Especially because, once again, if you're going first, and this is why you main 3, because you usually, like on the dice roll, you want to go first. Opening this is very good. Now, if you say win game 1 and you know your opponent's going to go first, you may side down on these, because it's by the time you get this, it might be too late to play it. So then you might side into other things, right? Mayakashi Winter, I just run at 1. Some people don't play this. I think it's a good card. I really like it. It's a continuous spell and it's got 2 effects. One is you contribute it with another Mayakashi monster on the field to just draw a card. So you got a little bit of draw power there. But then the other thing I like about it is you can banish it and another card from your graveyard to special Mayakashi from your graveyard. And what you want to do in this deck is special summon your synchros from the graveyard, because they all, get effects when they're summoned from the graveyard. So I played as a 1-of. I think it's a nice card. And you want to have It's a good target too to use with Eldritch, like if you're in a situation where it's not good. I think that's why you can get away with a card like this, because Eldritch has use for it if you're in a situation where it's not going to work. But I like it as a tool to give me an extra summon and an extra draw. And the other reason I like it is because when you end your full combo, you will always have an extra Daki on board, because Daki always will special summon back at the end. And so usually what I do is I use this with the extra Daki to just get a free draw, and then I have extra card advantage at the end of my combo. And then this is in the graveyard where I could summon another body if I want to. So I actually like Winter at 1. I think it's a good card. Mayakashi Mayhem, I think, is probably the more questionable one. I do run it at 1 because it is good if you get it off. I would say if I wasn't playing Eldritch, I don't know if I would run it, because Eldritch at least gives me an out to use this card if I'm not in a good situation to use it. This is kind of honestly like a win more card, because you have to be in a good situation for the card to be good. It's a continuous trap, and basically has 4 different effects, and you can use each effect once per turn. And it happens when a zombie synchro is special summoned, but from the graveyard, essentially. It says except from the extra deck. Well, the only other place you're going to summon it from is the graveyard. So when you summon your zombies from the graveyard, you can either draw a card, you can set a Mayakashi spell or trap to the field, you can send one monster with the lowest attack your opponent controls to the graveyard, or you can do 800 direct damage, right? It could be a mean tiebreaker card to deal 800 direct damage, but honestly, I've been playing it for several weeks at locals, and I've never actually used it properly. I've only used it as like material to use Eldritch. So it's definitely one you could cut if you want to make room for something, but I think it's decent enough to just give it a try and have it in there, right? Then the other thing we're going to run is we've got, let me finish up with like regular stuff, and then we'll go into hand traps. I just want to make sure I have this properly. All right. So then what we want to do is we want to focus on getting to Hajun as quickly as possible, right? 1 for 1, you run, and you can only run it at 1. This would definitely be a 3 of if you could, but you just pitch a monster, special summon a level 1 from the deck. This is get you to Hajun, right? And then we talked about we have 3 Mayakashi return to get you to Hajun. Then what you do is you run 3 Small World. The zombies all have like one thing in common. Small World is really good in this deck. Pretty much any monster you start with, you can end on Hajun with Small World. So basically you're running a whole bunch of cards to just get you into your 1-turn combo with Hajun. So Small World can search it out, 1 for 1 can get it, Mayakashi return can get it. So you have plenty of ways to get the Hajun within the deck. Then you're running a bunch of hand traps. So let's go into like hand trap stuff. Okay. So we'll put those aside. So for the hand traps, you run Call by the Grave. Very good because it's really protection against like Ash and their hand traps. It's a way to out those. Droplet, good monster effect negation. We run 3 Crossout Designator. And once again, I talked about this is important because we are playing so many hand traps that Crossout's going to cover a lot of what your opponent's playing. And it's a great thing to open with to negate whatever they try. Because the big weakness that Mayakashis have is the combo is very easy to stop. It's 1 Ash away and the combo's gone, right? You do have some backup strats, but if you can negate that Ash either with Call By or Crossout, then you're golden. And once you get the combo, I don't know that I've lost the match that I've gotten the combo off. So if you get the combo off, you're probably going to win. So you play Crossout to negate that. And then I run 3 Imperm. I really like Imperm, good monster effect negate. Once again, some of this stuff is kind of up to your preference. But that's up to you. But yeah, that's pretty much the whole lineup, right? It's the Mayakashi cards and then all like hand traps. All hand traps and things to negate. And it surprisingly works really, really, really well, right? So let's go ahead and let's go through the extra deck lineup, and then I'm going to explain what these all do. So the extra deck is very easy to put together. It's literally 2 of every single Mayakashi that exists, except for one of them you only run 1. So for synchros, you have a 3-star you run 2 of, you have a 5-star you run 2 of, you have a 7-star you run 2 of, you have a 9-star you run 2 of, and then the 11-star you only run 1. Okay, so that's pretty much your synchro lineup. Okay, and then your link monsters, you have 2 of the link 2, you have 2 of the link 3, and you have 2 of the link 4. And that's pretty much what you run. It's one of the easiest extra decks to put together because it's so just laid out for you. So let me explain what each of these do. We'll start with the synchros. The synchros all have one thing in common, which is they all have an effect when they are summoned from the graveyard, and they can also summon themselves if the level above them is destroyed from the field or leaves the field by an opponent's card effect and goes to the graveyard, essentially. So if you have a synchro on the field and your opponent destroys it, whatever the lower one is will summon itself out from the graveyard and get its graveyard effect. What this one does, I don't use the level 3's effect very often, but when it's summoned from the graveyard, your monsters can't be destroyed by battle. Not really a big deal, but it's like a body, it's a presence, right? The 5-star, when this one's summoned from the graveyard, it will mill 3 cards. That's good if you want to just get stuff in your graveyard. I don't use it, once again, a ton. The main ones I use are the 7. When the 7 gets summoned from the graveyard, you pop a spell or trap. Very useful. The 9-star, when summoned from the graveyard, you pop a monster, which is good. And then the 11-star, he's a 3,300 body. I pretty much just think of him as a vanilla beater. If he is summoned from the graveyard, though, he's unaffected by your opponent's card effects, which can help him survive, right, and be good. And then once again, so the general idea is, let's say I have the 11 on the field and it gets destroyed. If the 9's in the graveyard, it's going to summon itself and pop a monster. If the 9 on the field is destroyed, then the 7's going to come out and pop a spell or trap. If the 7's on the field, then, or if the 7 gets destroyed, then the 5 is going to come out and mill 3. And if the 5 is destroyed, the 3-star comes out. It has to be the specific one also. They're worded very specifically. Like this one says specifically on it, if a level 9 synchro Mayakashi synchro is destroyed, then you summon it. So it's not like if the 9-star is destroyed, I can't bring out like the 3 or the 5. You got to do the one that comes right below it, is essentially how that works, right? So that's the basic idea of the synchros, is they just come out from the graveyard, they do some decent effects. Mainly, I like the monster pop and the spell and trap pop. That's what I use that for mostly, okay? Then let's talk about how the links operate. So the link 2 has an effect. You're not really going to use it very much. So what the link 2 does, if a synchro is destroyed from an opponent while this is out, you can cut its monster's attack and defense in half. And then the other thing that it can do is, if it's pointing to a synchro, they can't target it for attacks. Usually you're not going to just leave this out. It's usually off the field. So think of the 2 as just you're going to link up into something else. If your opponent interrupts you, sure, it could end up on the field and some of that could come into play. Okay, so that's how the 2 works. The 3 is probably, well, the 3 and the 4 are really the stars of the deck, okay? So the 3, when the 3 comes out, it can target an effect monster and negate its effects. And then the big thing with it is, if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and special summon one of your synchros as a quick effect. So the general idea is, we talked about all these synchros, right? My opponent does something I don't like. Maybe they play Skill Drain or something. I could banish this from the graveyard. Well, Skill Drain's a really bad example. Let's say they play a different Floodgate or something that's really annoying that I want to get off the field. Or they play a field card, right? That's a good example. Let's say they're playing a field card that you want to get rid of. Maybe they put out Runic Fountain or something like that, right? You can banish this from the graveyard, bring out your level 7, and then pop the field card as a quick effect, right? It's pretty good. So in the graveyard, this is really like your key to banishing, and then you special summon. The other thing that's cool about this is it'll be banished at that point. Mayakashi Winter, which I talked about earlier, can actually special summon a zombie from the banished area. So you could resummon this out, get it back to the graveyard, and use it again. So that's another nice thing you can do with the Link 3. And then we have the Link 4. The Link 4 is very good, and this is what you kind of want on your end board. This says when any card effect is activated in the graveyard, so you can use this on your opponent. Like if your opponent activates a monster effect or summons a monster from the graveyard, are the 2 triggers for this. So if anybody summons one from the graveyard or activates an effect in the graveyard, twice per turn, this can target an effect monster, negate its effects, and make its attack 0. This is what allows the deck to kind of get over anything that might be in its way. Because naturally 3,500 is the most attack I can put out with a monster. So no matter what my opponent does, I have a way to do that. Now, the big thing with this is, like, if I summon this, remember, Dokki's in the graveyard. Dokki is considered an activated effect. So if I summon any extra deck Mayakashi monster, Dokki technically activates from graveyard. So you could do Dokki Chainlink 1. This could go Chainlink 2. And then this can negate something and make its attack 0, and then Dokki comes out. So, and you can do that twice per turn. So this is really great for shutting down your opponents. What you can do with this too is, when you end your combo, the Link 3 will be in the graveyard. You can banish it, summon something, and when you activate that effect in graveyard, you can trigger this off to negate them and make them 0, right? So that's essentially how this works. So let me demo an example of how this works. So let's say literally your opening hand could just be Hajun, right? So if Hajun is your opening hand, that's the goal, is to get to him. Remember, you could do Small World, you could do Mayakashi Return, you could do 1-for-1. Any of those are going to get him out. So this is the standard combo. You use your normal summon on Hajun. Hajun will special summon Daki from the deck. So we go ahead and we special summon Daki. And then what happens is you start to kind of climb. So then what you do is you synchro these two out, and you're going to go for a 3-star. Now, I will say on Master Duel, this deck is very painful to play because it takes forever to do all the climbing. What's nice in real life is, like, if your opponent, you can ask them, like, hey, are you going to stop any of it? And if they say no, you can just, like, fly through this. But what happens, we'll do it slow so you understand. You summon the level 3. Daki activates in Graveyard, and will summon itself out. We'll keep the Graveyard over there. And then you just synchro again into a 5. So you go up into the 5. And then Daki will activate in Graveyard, summon out. Then you synchro into the 7. So we go into the 7. Daki activates in Graveyard to summon. Then you go into the 9. Okay, and then Daki activates, summons. And keep in mind, all of these synchros, they don't really have any, they're all vanillas, like, on the field, right? That's all their stuff is getting summoned from the grave. And then what's going to happen is you're going to end on Daki coming out like this, and you have the 11-star, right? Now, if you, say, have Yuki Musume and, like, can summon that and have extra body, you can go, like, extend even further. But we'll do, like, this is the bare minimum play that you would do. So you would end on this, and then what you want to do is you want to start to link climb. Because the link climb, you just need 2 Mayakashis, or 2, yeah, just 2 Mayakashi. So we link these together, and then we go into the link 2. And then that triggers Daki to come out. You link again into the link 3. Okay, so we go like that. Daki comes back out. Okay, and then you link into the... And then when this comes out, if they have a monster, you can negate it if you want to. And then you're going to link into the link 4. Okay, and then at this point, when the link 4 comes out, when Daki activates to summon, if they have something you want to negate and make 0, you can. Otherwise, Daki will come out, and you would end on that. So this would kind of just be a standard setup. Now, this doesn't seem like the strongest setup, but on their turn, I've got my link 3 here as a quick effect. So I could quick effect, summon one of those, do an interruption, something like that. So here's a couple of things. So let's say, depending on what your hand is, right? Let's say I have Mayakashi Winter in hand. So I'll show you what I like to do with Mayakashi Winter. Just give me 1 second here. I accidentally just mixed a bunch of my deck together. There we go. Side deck and extra deck. So let's say you have Mayakashi Winter, right? So at this point, this is what I would like to do, is I would put Mayakashi Winter out, and then I can sacrifice it with Daki to draw a card, and then I could use Winter to, like, summon something if I need to. What I would probably do is I could do Winter, or what I could do is I could do the link 3 on my turn, and I could bring out another body if I want to, just have a body to extend. And then I could use Winter to, like, summon that link 3 that was banished if I want to get it back, right? So that's kind of like a typical start like that. Some other things that we can do is, obviously, if you have Eldritch and you have a Speller Trap and you're kind of like dead in the water, you can do that. I guess I'll cover Eldritch in case any of you are unfamiliar with how Eldritch works. So Eldritch... basically, what he can do is, if he's in your hand, you can discard him in a spell or trap card to pop a card on the field. And then if he's in the graveyard, you can send a spell or trap from your field to the graveyard to add him back to your hand. And then you can summon any zombie, but you usually summon him. Gains 1,000 attack, and then he cannot be destroyed by card effects for basically until your next turn, which is pretty good, right? So let me show you another extension play. So let's do another start here, okay? So... and what I could maybe do is I could do some random draws, but I would have to, like, sit and shuffle, right? But let's say I open with, like, Hajun. And let's say I have Yuki Musume, because we'll show you, like, some of the really big extension plays you can do. So let's say I have Yuki Musume, because that's, like, a really good card to have. So what you would do is you would normal summon Hajun, and then you'd get Daki. So we get Daki again. So Daki's out like that. Okay. And so now what you can do is, since you have a Mayakashi on board, you can special summon this and then send a card to the graveyard. So then what I would do is I would send Eldritch to the graveyard in this situation. And now I have kind of like an extra body to play with. So now what you do is you do the synchro climb. So I'll show you how I do it really fast at locals. So I'm going to go into the 3. And if my opponent says it's okay, I'll say goes into the 3, goes into the 5, goes into the 7, goes into the 9. Like, I just basically get to put them all in my graveyard. And then I could end on the 11 here, right? So I would just have the 11 out. and then Dokki's going to resummon back on that 11 coming out. So now I have Yuki Musume to play with to do the link climb. So now I can link climb and I can actually leave this big body on board. So this is ideal. And then you would link climb and then you would go into the 2, into the 3, right? And then you would end on the 4. So you'd have something like this opening turn. And then you'd still have Dokki on board because Dokki comes out and summons at the end. So then this is actually a decent opening board that you have. And then we have Eldritch in graveyard, right? So let's say I happen to have any spell or trap. So let's say, you know, in this situation, I'm going first. Let's say I have Mayakashi Mayhem and I don't want to do anything with that. I could set that and I could, you know, I could set that and I could do Eldritch's effect. I could have Eldritch on board. We'll show like the super ideal open here, right? So we could have Eldritch on board. And let's say, so I could leave my board like this. Now, if I'm going first and if I have it, if you have Ghost Meets Girl, a Mayakashi story, what you do is you could set this, okay? And let's say maybe I didn't have as good of a hand and I didn't have all these monsters and I still needed to extend. What you could do is, so let's say I ended up with like a more bare minimum board and like this is all I have on board is this, right? And this is what I showed you last time. But I have this Ghost Meets Girl. I don't necessarily want to give this up, right? So there's another really good play you can do. On my turn, I could banish the Link 3. And I could just summon something, and this could be a situation where, you know, maybe here's where I would want to take like this, and then maybe I would mill 3 to put stuff in my graveyard. I could do something like that, and then what I could do is I could link again. Now just remember, the links and the synchros are all unique. You can only ever have one on the field. So I can't get the link 4 again, but I could take this and I could just link climb back up, and this is why you put 2 of everything, because you want to be able to cycle through it twice. So let's say I do that into the link 2, and then I get the link 3. Now I would end on this, but I can't go into the link 4, but I have that. And you might be saying, well, I already banished that link 3. Now I don't have my interruption. Well, if you have Ghost Meets Girl, this is a really sweet combo. So what you do is your opponent draws. During their draw phase, you play Ghost Meets Girl. You tribute this. Now it's in their graveyard and they can't special summon anything for their turn. So now they're just like locked out. And then if they happen to try to get something going, this is now in the graveyard to banish and you can summon something else again. So that's another really, really nice combo. So the deck really, it can just do this insane synchro link climb, put out a lot of damage really quick, and you're just trying to negate your opponent out with hand traps. Now, another weakness of the deck, I would say, is because it is so trap, you know, it's so hand trap heavy. I have had turns where I draw all hand traps and nothing for my Mayakashis. Those are the types of ones where you hope you get into an Eldritch, or like I've top decked Mayakashi Return and that's all it took to kind of get me rolling, right? So there's a lot of different things you can go there. I guess what I'll do too is I'm going to explain Small World because I know that's a card that confuses people, and I'll explain how I use it in this deck. So let me kind of get this stuff off of here. So let me go into Small World really quick. The way Small World works, so we'll just put out a bunch of cards, all zombies that have, you know, different things going on. Whoops, these don't go here. No. And then I'm going to talk about side deck too, and some things I'm side decking right now. We'll put Eldritch out. I think that's it. Well, and then you've got a bunch of hand traps, and those may or may not work depending on the hand trap. We got Nibiru, we got Ash. Actually, no, I think a lot of this does really work. Because like Ash and Ghost Spell are zombies, right? Yeah, this all works really well. So the way Small World works is essentially you have to reveal a monster in your hand. Then you have to reveal a card in your deck that has exactly one thing in common. And the things it's looking at are type, attribute, attack, and defense. I'll double check to see if there's anything else. Type, attribute, level, attack, and defense also count. Okay, so they can only have one thing in common between those, right? The nice thing is we have a nice variety of things where they only have one thing in common. So let's just do an example, right? Like let's say I have Nibiru in hand. Let's say I get a really bad hand and I open Nibiru and Small World, and that's pretty much all I've got, right? So what I do is I have to play Small World and reveal Nibiru, okay? And so what I do is I usually leave it out so I can do this. So I have to reveal something in my deck that has one thing in common. Well, it's rock, 3,000 attack, 600 defense, but it is light. So I do have a light monster in here, which is Eldritch. And Eldritch I don't think shares anything else in common. Their levels are different. They're different types. And then their attacks and defense do not line up. The only thing they share in common here is the attribute. Okay, so then I reveal Eldritch. Basically what it is these two are going to get banished. And then off of Eldritch, I can add anything to my hand that shares one thing in common. And typically what you want is Hajun. If we look at Hajun, different, zombie is the same, and then attack defense different. So this shares one thing in common with Eldritch. I can add this to my hand. And you'll find with a lot of the cards in here, you can find your way to Hajun, right? Or to something that's decent off of one of these. So it's pretty much you just have to have things that have one thing in common, and a lot of these zombies do, and can get you there. Even, if I have Droll, for example, Droll, I think, I don't know. Yeah, so like even with Droll, right? If I had Small World with Droll, I could use Hajun as the second piece because they're win, but they have level 1, so that doesn't work. But Daki, I think, does work because Daki shares defense with it. Does not share attack, does not share typing, does not share attribute, does not share level. So I could go Droll into Daki, and then from there, I can actually get into Hajun because Hajun does not share level, does not share attribute, it shares zombie, and then attack and defense are different. So even off of like something like Droll, like you can get to Hajun. So practice with Small World the more you use it, but you're going to find that almost any monster in this deck, you can Small World in the Hajun. So the general idea is you've got the 3 Mayakashi Return, the 3 Small World, the 1-for-1, Hajun itself. Yuki Musume in a way is kind of a starter to help get you going, right? Like there's a lot of cards that can basically get the combo going. So anyways, guys, I'll stop blabbering. I think I've talked enough about the deck. So let me know if you guys have any questions, if you think this is an interesting deck. But I've been liking it in real life, playing it in tournaments. Just a side note, if you are playing this on Master Duel, I gotta go side deck too. Let me go side deck too. If you are playing this on Master Duel, the list is a bit different. Crossout's only at 1. So you have to go less on crossout and play other, substitute with other hand traps that you want to play. But yeah, let's talk about side deck. So you can kind of decide based on your locals, but some cards I put in the side deck, Lightning Storm, I think is a good one you can use. Evenly Matched is a great one, and some of these could be main deck depending on your locals. I actually really like Synchro Zone in this deck. I think siding maybe a couple of those is a good idea. Synchro Zone, as long as your opponent isn't playing Synchro, this is kind of like a floodgate to lock them out, and your deck loves Synchro. So Synchro Zone, I think, is a very good one you can use. Rivalry of Warlords is good because you're playing all zombies. So if you're playing an opponent that isn't using all the same attributes, then Rivalry can be very good. I actually think Imperial Iron Wall is very important. I run 3 of these on the side, and basically this says your cards cannot be banished. The reason why this is important, when you're playing a deck that relies solely on the graveyard, if your opponent is using like D-Shifter, Macro, Dimensional Fissure, or if they're playing Runic, which banishes a ton, like you can't win against those decks. So like I put 3 of these in the side because it is essential. If I get into a really bad matchup that is banishing everything, I have to have this to win. The only time I've ever beaten Runic is because I've had this. If I don't have this, Runic beats me every single time. Okay. So that's really important. Feather Duster, you could play like a couple Lightning Storms and a Feather Duster. Once again, if you're playing a heavy back row deck, you want that. I think specifically for Tenpai, because that's really big right now, Dimensional Barrier, so I can stop them from Synchro Summoning. And then Threatening Roar is actually very good against Tenpai. What you'll find is if Tenpai doesn't OTK you turn 1, you've actually got a pretty good chance of winning depending on what you drew. And I have been able to win against Tenpai with this deck, which is pretty awesome. So the side deck, though, is going to be really important for that. So that's kind of the types of things I'm running on my side. Some of these, if you like to main them and then like side other ones, you have a lot of choice and preference there, depending what is going on at your locals, right? So anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the Mayakashi. I think it's a very good deck. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.